Our next presenter is Marc Swanson. Marc will focus on the whys and hows and how-nots in developing an effective interpretive program. Again, please put your questions in the question box down at the bottom, and feel free to make any comments in the chat box. Marc Swanson is a teacher. He came to Alaska and taught in a variety of rural villages before ending up in Seward. After retiring, he continued to follow educational-related career paths, including providing interpretive programs for Kenai Fjords National Park, developing curriculums and a video series for Kenai Mountains Turning an Arm National Heritage Area, and implementing an innovative environmental education program. It's my honor to please welcome Marc Swanson.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for the intro. I also have a live audience here.
Yeah. Oh, good.
Yeah, I'm Marc Swanson. I was a teacher for 21 years here in Alaska. I worked on the national park on boats for interpreting for about 7 or 8 years. Then worked for Exit Glacier Guides as a hiking guide, and we've got some of them around here. I wanted a live audience. I mean, I don't really like looking just at me. I don't know how you guys deal with it. But anyhow, I'm going to share some ideas on how to develop an interpretive program when you're out in the field, okay? An effective one. But before we do that, we're going to play a little game. Okay, it's a game I learned as a Boy Scout. It's called Kim's Game, and it'll help explain why the internet was made, because life must have been really boring back then. Okay, Kim's Game, what we would do is we would go ahead, one person would take a bunch of objects, put them on a table, cover it with a cloth, then we'd come and uncover it and gather around, and we'd have a few moments to actually memorize everything on that table, okay? It's kind of an observation thing. So don't have really a table. So I'm going to give you 2 lists of things to memorize. No writing down. Okay, list A. List is cypress, broccoli, 38.175, mustache, ceviche. You got it? Good. List B. Hat, shirt, pants, socks, shoes. Now remember those, okay? We'll come back to them in a moment. Okay, so anyhow, the title of my presentation is, oh, it's backwards. This is why I don't do technology. Okay, well, it says it's tourist season. Remember, it's not just catch and release. Who would have figured? Okay, and the whole idea behind that is that as guides, if you're a guide out on the water or wherever, you basically have 2 expectations, right? Number 1, bring them back safe and sound, at least alive, right? Then objective number 2, expectation, is get a good tip, right? Beyond that, everything's gravy. But I would say that there's a 3rd expectation, no, an obligation, really, that you have the obligation to get them to understand this land, to provide knowledge about this place called Alaska, okay? Don't release them until you've given that to them. So in order to do that, you need a cohesive plan strategy, an interpretive strategy, okay? So let's go back to the Kim's Game, okay? List A. Think through it. How many did you remember?
Cypress.
You don't have to yell. How about list B? It was easier, right?
Yeah.
Simple. Because list A was random. There was all these things that were not connected, right? And also list B was not random, but list B also, you had a connection with that, a cognitive, you might wear different hats than I do, but we all had the idea of hat, right? That's an interpretive program, It's not these random facts, not just how big is a humpback whale, or how tall are the mountains around Prince William Sound, or how many hairs are in the armpit of a sea otter, okay? Those are interesting, but they don't provide understanding to the area. That's what effective interpretation is. It provides understanding. Got it? Okay, so with that, I could just end my whole presentation right now and just ask for questions, because that's basically it in a nutshell. But the strategies behind that I will give you. Okay, Backwards, but that's all right. I don't care.
Hey, Mark, it's not backwards for us. Don't worry. We see it the
Oh,
right
it's not. Oh, that's so nice. Okay, there you go. You can read that. Know your stuff. Okay. You got to research. You got to read. You got to know everything about the area that you're working in. You got to know the geology. You got to know the life, the marine ecosystem, the ocean dynamics. You got to understand the history, the prehistory. Know about the indigenous people, how they lived, and also how they live now. Get all this vast amount of knowledge. Now, you're going to have this much knowledge, right? You're going to use about that much. You're only going to use that much. But effective interpretation means knowing your stuff. Okay? Once you got that, then you develop an effective strategy. Got it? And that comes around to consider to developing a thematic program. Okay? I hate PowerPoints. This is as close to a PowerPoint as I'm going to get. Okay. One effective strategy is a thematic program. What a thematic program is it basically packages the information, okay? Instead of it being these unrelated facts and things about what you're seeing, it tries to package it into basically a storyline, really. That's what it is. You try to go ahead and show a common or interconnectivity to the information. And the reason for that is that the recall and the meaning will be better for your visitors. They're going to be able to remember the story instead of these random facts. Okay. So the thing is, you got to choose a theme that works with you and with your information that you're going to choose to present. And that's probably the toughest part, is what will be an effective theme. Okay. I had a variety of things when I was doing the national park boats. These were two of my themes. Well, just nutshells. They're not really a thematic statement. On theme number one, which I called it the Fabulous Feast. And the Fabulous Feast, basically, though it was centered on food, what my goal of the program was to show how the abiotic, the life form, or the biotic, the life forms, is connected with the abiotic, that there's interconnectivity to that. Theme B, rather, was rattling the cognitive cage. Everyone comes up here, so to challenge the preconceptions that visitors have when they come up here and change the way they look at things, okay? Everyone comes up here with an idea of what Alaska is like and what the animals are like. And that the goal of that theme is for them to view that differently, okay? Now, just to give you an example of how that plays out, okay? We have two kayak guides. Kayak guide number one, they're both going to Prince William Sound. They're using that thematic statement. Kayak B, kayak two, is using that. It changes the way that you present the information, because here, kayak guide number one comes across a sea otter floating in the water. And like a good interpreter, you aren't going to go ahead and just start talking. Let them enjoy the resource. Let them look at the otter, make some observations, right? And then kayak guide number one, using the connectivity theme, will say, you know what? There is a connection between that otter and the glacier up there. And they go, huh? And then you realize that you tell them that the workings of the glacier creates glacier silt, comes out of in the meltwater, comes out into the bay right where we are, forms this shallow, mucky bottom right underneath us. Okay, perfect for a sea otter. Number one, they're a shallow diver, not particularly deep diver. And number two, lots of clams down there in that mud. They love their clams. So it shows how the glacier creates habitat for the sea otter. But kayak guide number two, who is using theme B, rattling the cage, cognitive cage, they come across the same sea otter floating in the water. Okay, again, they wait for the otter to make observations, look at it, take their selfies with the otter, whatever they're going to do. And then they say, you know, I know what you're thinking about that otter. Cute, adorable, cuddly. I see something else. I see an Achilles heel. They go, huh? You say, listen, that thick fur that allows this animal to live in these cold waters is also the cause of their near demise, their Achilles heel. Because number one, when the Russians came, right, they were here for the fur, they killed those sea otters down to nearly the last animal, okay? And later the population came back, but then Exxon Valdez happened. And over the south central coast, any oil that got on that sea otter's pelt caused it to mat down, lost its ability to keep warm, died of hypothermia, or by ingesting the toxins while trying to groom. It shows two different themes, same resource, different information to tell the story. That's how a thematic program can work for you. It's difficult to develop a thematic program. And I got to tell you, when I went through the training with the national park, I said, nah, this is going to work. I've been teaching for 21 years. I know how to teach. But that's the thing. There's a difference between teaching and interpreting. It's two different animals. Okay? So you want to go ahead and be able to approach it differently. And the thematic program is very, very powerful. And takes a while, but I would suggest considering it for your program. Okay. Another thing to remember is that it's not about you. My job was an interpreter. Okay, that was what I was supposed to do. And you could get too carried away. You could talk too much. I mean, you'd learned all this stuff. You want to make sure that you want to share it with your clients, right? But you got to know that they did not come up here thousands of miles to listen to you talk. Okay, as much as we would like to think that. And, you know, like I said, my job was to talk. I'd be out there with a microphone and on the boat, and I talked about the orcas and I talked about the sea otters and stuff. And this one guy helped remember to keep it in check. It was a beautiful day out on the water. And this guy was out there on the port side of the boat. He was just out there in the sun enjoying himself. And I walked right by him and he said, "Excuse me." And I said, "Yeah." He said, a question I was dumbfounded. He said, "Why are you here?" And I said, "I work here. I'm with the national park. I'm doing some interpretation, telling people, you know, about stuff." He said, I'll never forget this question, "Why?" And I said, "Well, as people like to know about the area, that's why." And then he said, the next question that even perplexed me more. He said, "How long are you going to be talking? How long?" And I said, "Well, I'm kind of on the boat the whole day." And then the last question he asked was, "Do you have any earplugs?" And I got it. You know what? Not everyone wants to hear your talking. That's why you want to keep it very strategic. You want to keep it short, right? You want to make it make sense. And give them earplugs if they want it, but consider your audience. Now, also, it's not just about yourself. Is that I was know when you've made a mistake. We're all going to make them. I'm good at admitting my mistakes because I make so much of them. I get good practice. But I was on this one boat where the captain was doing the narration. And the captain, great captain, extremely knowledgeable captain. He was awesome. But my role was just to answer questions from people. And I was up on the top deck talking to this one elderly guy. And we came across a goat way up on the mountain. So we pulled up there, and the captain starts talking about the goat. And the guy looks up there and he says, "You know what? That's no expletive goat." You can fill in the blank there. that's a rock.
Oh.
And I looked up there and it was a rock. And about the time that we noticed that it was a rock, the captain noticed it was a rock. But instead of saying it was a rock, he keeps on talking about the goat. And eventually he went ahead and said, you know what? A lot of goats look like rocks, but this is definitely not a rock. I don't remember anything else that captain said that day years ago. I bet I remember, and I bet that visitor does still remember that goat story. When you find something that's wrong, you've made a mistake, it's actually a log, not an otter, whatever, admit it. Make a joke out of it. It's fine. And lastly, you're going to encounter information, a question that you simply don't know the answer to, right? And what your goal there is just say, I don't know. You take your knowledge and say, well, it might be this based on this. But the best thing is, I don't know. But if you really want to impress them, say, you know, if you give me your contact information, I'll go ahead and get back to you. And I'll find the answer to that question. And then you and your company that you're working for or organization, they're going to remember that. So consider that. Okay. It's not all about yourself. Okay. The question is there such a thing as a stupid question? Yeah. And the answer is, yeah, lots. You're going to be peppered with them. You're going to have lots of stupid questions. But I would suggest something else, is that they aren't so much stupid as just experiential. Alaska is a land of superlatives. Alaska doesn't make sense. That's why people are here. They're here to see these incredible mountains, these glaciers, and these orcas jumping out of the water and stuff. They're here to experience things that they've never experienced before. So for a dirt farmer from Iowa, sitting his butt in a kayak to ask, looking at the mountains over him, say, what elevation are we at? You want to say, well, your butt's about 3 inches below waterline, the sea level. But the reality is, it just doesn't make sense. That said, I had one stupid question as an interpreter in all the years. And the question was, on the boat, when do we get to see the puffins? Now, I love birders, okay? Many of you are birders, and they're great people, kind of a subspecies, but they're great. But there was this couple. They were an elderly couple. And we were out on the boat, beautiful day, and they kept asking, when do we get to see the puffins? I'd say, it's coming up. We're going to go to the Chiswell Islands, maybe Cape Resurrection. You'll get to see your puffins, okay? All through they went up to the captain. The captain came down. Nicole, she actually called me and said, there's some people that want to see puffins. Would you deal with it? I said, I've dealt with it. Anyhow, so, okay. Towards the end of the trip, we actually made it out to Cape Resurrection. We had puffins. We had puffins flying. We had puffins on the water. We had puffins so close they were practically sticking in your ear. And I said, all right, we got our puffins. And I saw them, and they came traipsing up to me, and they were pissed. I said, you saw your puffins, right? And they said, no. And they handed me a brochure, and on the brochure was puffins on a cliff. And there hadn't been puffins on the cliff. They said, we want to see puffins like this. And I was about to make a comment when they said, that's the way it was on the last trip. And I went, you've got to be joking. What the problem was expectations. Their expectations were so great and so focused that they could not get beyond it. They let their expectations ruin the adventure. Okay? Can't do that. Can't do that. This on the boat, we used to hand out these comment cards. And the comment cards would evaluate how they liked the trip, okay? And on those comment cards, it was really an interesting phenomenon. And I couldn't figure out at first. But on those warm, sunny days, when there were orcas jumping out of the water and puffins and everything for the birders, the comment cards were good. They're fine. But on those days when the rain was slashing and it was waves and it was gray and it was foggy, those comment cards were over the top. And for a while, I figured it was me. Damn, I'm a good interpreter. And I'll take some credit, because I worked hard on those days. Because you had to work hard. But I figured it out. Those people on the sunny days, when they saw the orcas and the humpbacks reaching out of the water and stuff, that's what they expected. How could it be different? That's what they expected when they came to Alaska. But those people that came on those rainy days, you could see it on their face. I paid for this trip. They were downcast. This was going to be a miserable trip. Guess what? It wasn't. Because it's a beautiful place we live in. And we showed them, despite the lousy weather, it's an incredible place. And that's where your interpretation comes in. And the fact that we live in a beautiful place. So, understand, they come with expectations. But you've got to work with those. Got it? Okay, let's see. What time do we have? Okay, so one thing I'd like to share with you. Happy kids, happy adults. Plain and simple. If you're dealing with a family, focus on the kids. Because if you're keeping those kids happy, the adults are elated. Think about what you would be able to do. I don't know, you're probably coming from all different types of trips that you're going to be leading. But think about what you would be able to act engaging to those kids. Teach them, because as you're interpreting the world for those kids, you're also interpreting it for the adults as well. On my trips out on the water, I would have blubber mitts and stuff for them to feel the water, to feel what it's like to be a whale with blubber. On hiking trips, especially in August, I remember one just miserable trip with 3 rather miserable kids where I said, you know what? How many berries are we going to find today? We're going to find, and it was berry season. We found all 5 or 6 of them, and they ate them, and we actually lined them up and decided which we actually lined them up in the order that they liked and stuff. And it turned out to be just a marvelous trip. And of course, the parents were happy too. Trips where you're trying to get up the Harding ice field, and you got kids that it wasn't their idea to go up the Harding ice field. Is that if you can get them up there, you've got some happy parents. So think of strategies specifically for kids, so that when you have those families, you'll keep them happy. Okay. Interpretation can lead to unexpected. And thus it was one day. It was one of those really rotten days. I had a bunch of Amish people from Iowa on board. Great people. They had the Amish hat, the guys did, and Amish suspenders, and the girls and the women had the bonnets on and long dresses and stuff, but they were just a hoot. And it wasn't too far that we were having puke, including Amish puke everywhere. It was not a good day. We had big seas, but we managed to get across the Cape Ialik and into Ialik Bay. If anyone's done that trip, you know as soon as you get around the corner, it just flattens out and everything is good. And it was. And everything settled down. But the neat thing was that as soon as it calmed down, some orcas joined us. Now, this was a good show. They were right underneath our boat, a big pod of orcas, okay? And they were just playing around in the water right by the bow. I'm looking straight down at those orcas. And Sarah, the lead deckhand, whenever she was, we did programs together, we called us the well whisperers because things always happened. That was extraordinary. And Sarah comes up and says, Swanson, I don't know, but I think those orcas, I think it's a magical moment they're having. And I said, huh? She said, I think it's an orca orgy. I said, and sure enough, these orcas were underneath, belly to belly, twisting through the water. It was the most magical thing. But how do you interpret it to Amish? And I said, folks, I'm on the microphone. So I said, folks, I don't know, but I think these orcas are having a magical moment. And they go, oh. And I said, I think they're having sex. I think they're making baby orcas. And they go, huh? And just at that moment, big old male, big dorsal fin, comes up on the surface and then flips over on his back, revealing his belly. And on his belly, in case you've never seen one, was big and proud and hot pink. And all the Amish children went, huh? And all the Amish men went, and all the Amish women went, and I didn't know really what to say other than it came to me. It said, folks, this is new meaning for Free Willy. That's all I can say. Then without thinking about it anymore, and I probably should have thought about it, I said, well, folks, that doesn't, when I die, I'm coming back as an orca. Male, female, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. So be ready for the unexpected, because I don't know if it'll involve orcas or not, but there you go.
Hey, Marc, could you hold that picture up just a little bit higher?
Yeah. Okay, little orca porn. Okay, there you are.
Up. We can't see it.
Oh, you did not see it.
There you go.
There, and you see it. That is not an orca. That's, I don't know what that is, but that is definitely, yeah.
Thank you. We got it.
But of course. So anyhow, lastly, every interpretive program, when you get them to the beach, the port, the end of the trail, you need a good conclusion, something to wrap it up. And they're not always the easiest. But like every other interpretive program, I give you my conclusion. Okay? So here we are. It's tourist season. And remember, there's no bag limit. And it is catch and release, but only after you have done the big 3 expectations. Okay? Don't let them go home without understanding this great land. Don't get them to see beyond the beauty to understand this thing that is called Alaska. There was a French author, and I used his quote quite a bit. It's probably the most overused quote for interpretive programs, Marcel Proust. And the quote is this. It is, the voyage of discovery is not so much in going to new lands, but seeing with new eyes. That is your job. Give them new eyes. Don't just go climbing on a glacier. Don't just take those selfies. Don't just go on that boat trip and see the glaciers. Give them new eyes and understanding about this land.
Thank you so much.
Oh, I'm not done. I got another one.
You got 1 minute.
As a teacher, I was told that teachers' influence, you never know how far it goes. And so it is with interpreters, I suspect. The last quote that I have is a Buddhist quote, and it is, a person who plants seeds, knowing full well that they'll never sit under the shade of the tree, has come closer to understanding the purpose of life. So go ahead, plant some seeds. Now I'm done.
Thank you so
Yes,
much.
thank you.
That was excellent. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, I got you.
And I learned a ton. I was an interpreter years and years and years ago, and I made many of those mistakes that you mentioned. And I just thoroughly enjoyed that. And I have now a bunch of things that I might take away from this and add to my family tourist interpretations. So I think that's going to be our session for today. Our final session will begin at 2:50. So we're going to have about a 10-minute break. We're going to have 3 presenters: Rob Kaler with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, who's going to talk about marine birds of Prince William Sound, followed by Louis Sass with USGS, who will present on Alaska glaciers. And our final presentation will be with Milo Bertram and Charlotte Westing, who are going to talk about their research on black bears in Prince William Sound. So sit tight here in the session and you'll automatically be pulled into the final session. If you are one of those presenters, please go up to the schedule tab at the very top and take us and go there early. So go to that session early so we can all meet prior. So we'll see you soon. Thank you.